Welcome to the latest episode of 305 Vox Populi here in the studio at St. Thomas University. And with us today, we have Judge Eleane Sosa Bruzon. How you doing, Judge?
I'm doing great, Mayor. How are you?
All is good. All is good. Thank you for joining us. I mean, the students are really excited to have you on and hear your story, right? Your story as to how you chose to go into the law field, but more importantly, that why as to why you decided to be a judge, right? Because it's a major shift, right? A lot of folks say you could become an attorney, but becoming a judge and making that difference, specifically where you're at in the domestic violence division, I think it's really fascinating. But what's that why where you wanted to make that shift?
All right. Well, let me start by saying thank you for having me here and allowing me to come back to my alma mater. I was telling some of the students that are here today that when I came to school, sadly, almost 20 years ago here, it was all trees. And so as I drove in here, all these beautiful new buildings, and I'm so excited for the students that are here that get to experience that. So that's amazing. So you're right. Being a lawyer is very different than becoming a judge. And so I started my career once I graduated from St. Thomas in the public defender's office in Broward County. And so I worked there for about 6 years. And then, like all things, I transitioned into civil practice and did that for another 6 years before the idea of even pursuing, the passion of becoming a judge popped into my head. And it was a bunch of different circumstances. I think it was the fact that I had a diverse practice that I had accumulated over those 12 years, that I had practiced in county court and civil court. And I think more importantly is I wanted to return to my roots, which was public service. So I served as a public defender in public service for 6 years. And when you get out of law school and you join either the office of the state attorney's office or the public defender's office, I always think that you're a special breed. You want to go in there because you want to save the world, right? You want to help those that need the help, whether it's the victim through the state or the defendant because they can't afford representation. And so that's your job to zealously represent them. And so I had been practicing in private practice where, private practice means money. Yep. So you move piles of money from one place to another. And I had been doing that and I was doing very well. I was a partner at my firm. I had, attorneys that I supervised. I was a litigator in court still, but I started getting that nudge to go back to public service. And the more I sat with myself and thought about that, the more the nudge came and started pulling me. And then, like all things in life, then it becomes when does the opportunity arise and how can you capitalize on that opportunity? And so in 2018, that opportunity arose. There was a judge that had retired and the seat was open. And so I made the decision to go through the election process versus the appointment process and run through the election. And I was lucky enough to be voted into office, and I began in January of 2019. I had great support from the citizens of Miami-Dade County. It was a long election, as you know. I have, tried to give the best of me to my, to the supporters that I've had, to the county, to serve them with honor, to follow the law. And I know we'll probably talk about this, but even when you don't want to, understanding that our job is to follow the law, to be able to have a courtroom where there's respect, very important, civility, very important in today's day and age, and to give those that walk into my courtroom the opportunity to be heard. And sometimes they don't like the decisions that I make because I have to follow the law, as I said, but that when they walk out of there, they can say, you know what, Judge Sosa Bruzon listened to what I had to say, and then she made the decisions, and I respect that.
But you know what's awesome? A county-wide election.
Yeah.
Right? So what's cool about that, I think it gives you such a great perspective because you're not only forced to campaign in your own neighborhood, right? Miami Lakes, High State, but you have to go to Miami Beach.
Absolutely.
Homestead, Miami Gardens, Opalaga. I mean, you name every single neighborhood. So how was that campaign process? Because I know it's very different than just, say, running for county mayor. There's a lot of rules. So if you could talk to us about the campaign and some of those rules that a lot of people don't know that judges have
to abide by. Absolutely. So you really don't know how big Miami-Dade County is until you have to drive from one end to the other. So the county-wide election is exactly that. You go in the primaries, which is an August ballot, which is usually a low turnout ballot. So you want to make sure you get out to the community and the community knows who you are so that they feel comfortable in giving you their vote, right? Which is the most powerful thing that any citizen has, which is their vote, their confidence in you to perform whatever expectation they have. So there were times where I was here in Miami Lakes and had to drive all the way to Homestead, and in the middle I had to work. So it is quite a feat. And you really don't understand the diversity that there is in Miami until you go to all these small community events everywhere from Miami Gardens to North Bay Village to Miami Beach to Sunny Isles to Miami Lakes to Hialeah, which is, neighboring Miami Lakes, but totally different. So it's humbling, to be honest with you. It's humbling. But at the same time, it, as a candidate, gives you this incredible energy because it makes you want to know the people that you serve. And so I thought it was a wonderful experience. And, it was a long campaign. I began campaigning really in 2017 for an election that occurred in August of 2018. So I spent many days in many community centers, doing bingos, talking to people about various, issues that they had, and, pretty much doing what I do now, which is sit and hear what they wanted from a candidate, what they expected, getting them to know me, allowing me to get to know them, etc. And all confined by the rules that we have to follow, okay? Because we have canons that we have to follow. For instance, the first question out of almost everybody that I ever met was, well, are you Republican or Democrat? We're nonpartisan. We're neither Republican nor Democrat. We come out in every ballot. We're not allowed to talk about our political affiliations or be part of any kind of political fundraising or events or anything of that. Think about it. You want your judge to be fair and impartial and neutral. And so as such, we have to represent ourselves in that way. And I had many citizens that would get mad. They were like, oh, well, you're lying to me. And I had in my phone an actual copy of the canon that says we're not allowed to talk about this. And it wasn't until I pulled it out and said, well, this is why I can't tell you anything about this, they would get angry with me. So that was a big obstacle that I ran into, at the very beginning, because that's what everybody wants to know. I would imagine, again, my election was in 2018. I'm coming up again now in 2024 for re-election. But that was a huge thing that everybody wanted to know. And it was something that I had to overcome to say, listen, let's put that aside for 1 second. Let me tell you who I am, what I've done, what my experiences is, and what I can bring to the bench. And we'll take it from there.
No, that's fascinating. And especially since we live in such a hyper-partisan environment, right? Everybody wants to know. They ask you right off the bat. But there's rules. And I appreciate you sharing that, because a lot of people don't know that those rules exist. But 2 days that were very important, I think, for you in terms of how your experience, right? Because for me as an elected official, the day that I won, right, the election, that feeling, and then my first day, sitting as mayor. So for you, how was that feeling? And it's very different, right, from winning the election that night. How did that feel? And then also your first day as a judge. Okay. Well, the day of the winning of the election, it's almost a surreal experience. Sometimes I'm like, even now, did that really happen? So it's a long day. You start at 7 a.m. and you're hitting all of these different precincts, and you're making the best of it. You're of course nervous, right? Because it's a contested election, and someone's on the other side, and there's always going to be a winner and a loser, and you're just hoping that you fall on the right side of that. So it's a very, very long day. And the way these elections are now, it's not like they're televised, right? The presidential election, you're used to seeing that, and it's televised on, every channel and all that. But for us, it's not. You're basically on a computer or on your phone in the internet at Miami-Dade.gov elections department, refreshing to see as the votes come in, right? And so it's like refresh. If you have bad internet, you're going to have a meltdown, right? So I refreshed, and the way that it comes in, and I know this because I work on the canvassing board. So early, the absentee ballots come in first. Then comes the early voting, and then comes the precincts as they come in. So I took a big lead right off the bat. And so I had been projected as the winner, which was great. But you're waiting literally for the fat lady to sing. You're like, I am not moving from this computer. I am not celebrating anything until the last precinct is called in. And when it was, it's almost like your body comes out, like your soul comes out of your body. I was thankful to God first and foremost for giving me the opportunity and allowing me to, become successful. I was thankful for the voters. I won by a great margin, by over 30,000 votes, which is huge when you know that it's a
a primary election and there's not a lot of voters that come out. And it was just an incredible experience. I celebrated in Hialeah with my local voters, with some of the other candidates that were successful as well. I was there with my daughter, my best friends were there, and it was an incredible moment. It really was. I have pictures still that, in my office that I look at and it takes you back to that moment. So yeah, it was wonderful. Versus my first day, which was terrifying. The first day is always terrifying because
True.
It is because, you know what the job is, right? But you don't know what the job is until you sit there, right? And you have to do it. And so there was, obviously a sense of nervousness, and we train ahead of time, but, there's something that happens in between that I remember all the time, which was the day that I got fitted for my robe. So in between the time I won the election and I took my first day, I had to go into the courthouse, and we went to this department where they fit you for your robe and they take your measurements so that you have, something that fits you. And they give you one to try on. And I still have this picture. So when I try on the robe for the first time, I felt like an almost another out-of-body kind of experience where you feel the weight of the job, right? And it's something that happens. I don't know if you notice, even when I talk about it, my posture changes because it is almost like you become a different person when you put that robe on. And I remember putting it on and they took a picture, and the lady takes a picture and she goes, "You look like you're terrified." And I'm like, I just felt the weight of the responsibility of this job. She's like, "Let's do another one for your family where you're smiling." Right? So I remember that day. And so when you take the bench, you feel that sense of responsibility immediately. And you know that you're, all the way that you've been working for the last 12, 15 years, however many years it is, switches into this new role. And so it's also something that you remember. And I had the flu, by the way, my first day.
Your first day?
It was terrible. I was like, please let me just get through the day. I had the flu. So I remember that. I was like, oh my gosh. But you just do it because you love it. And you're so grateful and honored to be there that they could have put me in a broom closet, at that point. And I was just so happy to be there and so grateful to be there and to be able to get to do the job.
What's so powerful that you said is when you felt the weight of the job, the responsibility. Talk to us about the responsibility, the work that goes in, because a lot of folks, there's a lot of county judges throughout our country, right? But what I've seen from you is that you put in an incredible amount of work to make sure that people are serviced. Because at the end of the day, you're in the domestic violence division, and that's incredibly important. We see cases, high-profile cases around our nation due to domestic violence. So we know how important that is. But the work to ensure that those cases move. Talk to us about that judicial process that a lot of people don't see. They see the day that the verdict comes in, right? But they don't see the work behind the scenes that takes a case from point A to point Z.
Right. It is a process, and we try to, provide justice in a timely manner, right? And so we work with a lot of factors. First and foremost, I do work in the domestic violence division, and so I have what's called a hybrid division. Miami-Dade County is really one of the only counties in all of Florida that I believe that has a separate domestic violence division. So we have 6 judges that sit in this capacity. And then we have 3 judges that do all the county crimes, so all the domestic violence county crimes. And then we also sit in the circuit capacity as active circuit judges to do the injunctions, right? What's commonly known as the stay-away orders or the injunctions, the restraining orders. Now, there are rules that we follow within the timing, right? You come in, you ask for a restraining order. Within 15 days, you get a hearing in front of the judge. Immediately, that's statutorily, we have to get that moving. And then, after that, you case manage to get it heard. If not within that first setting, within, a specific time frame, depending on the issues. In the criminal area, it's very much the same, right? There's an arrest within, you see your judge after first appearance within 24 hours. And after that, you come in for arraignment, where the state makes their decision as to whether or not they're going to file charges. And then your job is to case manage, to move the case to get it to trial, because we have 90 days to get these cases to trial. So, our job is constantly working to push these cases forward, at the same time allowing the lawyers to have sufficient time to work the cases as they see fit, so that they can zealously represent either the state of Florida or their clients, depending on what, where they are in the case or who they're representing in the case. So it's a balance. I always say, people say, when I was a lawyer, I always thought, oh, the judge has the easiest job. He just has to listen to us, or she just has to listen to us and then make a decision. But I find it to be that I read more and I study more and I learn more as a judge than as the lawyer, because when I was a lawyer, I just had to know my part, right? And whatever it is that the other party was arguing against, so I can counter that. But as the judge, you have to know all the stuff, right, that they're giving to you. You have to be briefed on all their positions, and they give you stacks of case law on both sides, and you have to read that and prepare. So I'm constantly reading. I don't read for fun anymore because I read so much for work, but that's the difference. And then when you put all of that together with what we had, which was the pandemic, where we basically shut down, that was, a situation that can either make or break you, because we were on hold and we just had all these cases piling up. And our division, the domestic violence division, imagine we're on lockdown, right? Everybody's confined to their homes. And if you are a victim of domestic violence, you are literally confined with the person who perpetrates these crimes against you. So we were open the entire time for people to come in and seek the protection, and then trying to figure out how to make that work with COVID, right? And our division used that time to push these cases, to transition very quickly from in-person to Zoom, so that people can still come in to work with the different, agencies to provide either shelter for the victims, or to work with the various departments, police departments, because sometimes you have to remove people from the home, depending on, what's being requested and what the nature of the situation are. So, that was a time where we really buckled down and tried to, push through these cases, because I know it's a question that, we discussed before we went on air, but we increased 25 to 30% of our petitions during that time, and we had to move these cases because they have to have a resolution. So the work is there, and the moving of the case, it's been mandated, like I said, by the Supreme Court, that we need to move these cases because we need to effectuate justice timely, right? And so that's what our goal is.
No, COVID was definitely tough, and I know that there was an uptick, unfortunately, in some domestic violence cases, because you're right, people were confined to their homes. So something we do a little different, the students get to ask you some questions.
Okay.
They have a long list. They were doing some research on you for the last week, so I know they got some great questions lined up. Who's gonna break the ice?
So everybody thinks like Judge Judy and stuff, right? Just sitting there and seeing stupid case after stupid case, right? But like being a county judge, right? How much work goes into like just office work, and how much is it actually being a judge in your gown?
Right. I love Judge Judy. Let me go on there and say that I love her. So, your time is split between your time in court, okay, which sometimes can be all day, right? So, if you have a trial and you can be in court one day or 10 days in the trial, right? You have various calendars that you have to attend to, first appearance calendars, you have arraignment calendars, sounding calendars. And so if you have, 15 cases on, that might take you 45 minutes. But if you have 60 or 80 cases, that might take you 4 hours. So it really depends. So we split our time. Primarily, we're in court handling issues. Believe it or not, there's a lot of cases, and people want to get in, they want to get in court. They want to have hearings. So we open up and give as much access as we can to that. Whenever we have off time, remember that what comes with the hearings or the different motions that you have is we have to write orders. So we often do, we have our office time for writing orders, for doing research. We're constantly training. We have one of the best judicial education systems in the state of Florida. I mean, everywhere across the country, they come to learn, about how they teach us to be great judges. And so we fill our time with that. We're the county court judges we're the judges of the people. We're literally the people's court. So we spend a lot of time in the community doing things like I am here today, meeting the students of St. Thomas, doing career days, speaking at different functions. Anything from speaking to doctors about the effects of domestic violence in court, all the way to speaking to middle schoolers about, hey, this is what stalking is. This is what cyber stalking is. Keep a lookout for So we spend a lot of our time in little different pools of areas. But primarily, we're in court. We're in court doing the things that we need to do to provide, access to justice for those who need it.
I had a question.
Sure.
Due to the neutrality of your position, how do you handle social media?
I try not to. So I am not a huge social media fan. I have, obviously my page that's representative of my judge page that I use for the community to stay involved in the things that I'm doing and the events that I go to, and for campaign purposes so that they know, what's happening in my career path. And I do have a personal page, but it's mostly just pictures of, me and my daughter and my mom, my spouse, going on vacation. We do not stop being a judge. And I think that's something that people don't realize. This is not a job. This is a life that you take on. And your neutrality, your impartiality travels with you in all areas of your life. And, I have been in many situations when I've walked in and said, this area here, this situation that's happening is not conducive to what I need, and I've had to leave. And that's just part of the job. I often don't engage in any kind of conversation that is going to cause any issues in any way, because that's not for me to do anymore. That's just not part of who I am anymore. And so it's the responsibility that I carry throughout all aspects of my life. And so I just don't engage in social media at all. I don't post very many things other than, like I said, my daughter got into Lourdes, so we posted that. She won her volleyball tournament. I'll post something of that nature. But outside of that, I don't really post anything about it. Yes, sir.
So deciding on a verdict of the judge is obviously tough, right? And your decision as a judge can have lasting impacts on people's lives. So has there ever been a time where you look back on a case and say, maybe I should have thought things differently, or maybe I should have looked a little bit more at the evidence?
Well, let me start by saying in a criminal case, the jury decides the verdict, okay, not the judge. The judge imposes the sentence based on the verdict, okay? In a civil action, unless it's a bench trial, in which case then I serve as the juror. And in a civil case, like the restraining orders, I do have to then make the decision. I think that, everybody who sits in this position is human. And there are cases that are difficult, and the decision that you make is a difficult decision. And, we follow the law and we set our emotions aside and we listen to what the lawyers have to say, and we're briefed on the issues and we're briefed on the law, and we do our own research and we make this decision. But when there are tough cases, I don't think anyone who's ever, sat on the bench can say that they've never said, wow, did I do the right thing? Did I not do the right thing? Did I read everything? I think that's just normal, right? It's normal to question yourself about that all the time, because we want to do the right thing. We want to follow the law. We want to give justice, as deserved. And so it weighs, every decision weighs on us, because we want to always do the right thing, right? We want to follow the law, and we want to make sure that we're getting the job right. So yeah, absolutely, I think so. Yes, sir.
It's a question to piggyback off. So with social media, with the new rise of it, like everyone's have platforms, you're able to speak more and reach more people. Do you think there's been like a spike in cases like linked to social media, or it has nothing to do?
There are sometimes cases that we see in the nature of cyber stalking when it comes into the domestic violence division. We see a lot of those cyber stalking cases, and so there is a rise in the nature of that cases where you have, YouTube personalities that are basically just going against each other or disparaging each other, and having their followers then go and disparage another person, or influencers or that stuff, the nature where they're saying things that's causing their business issues. So we have seen a rise in those type of cases. And I think it's because, as you said, everyone is in social media, right? Everyone wants 50,000 followers or $150,000, 50,000 followers to influence so we do see that. But we handle it, the same way as we would any other case. The law is written out there, and we follow what the law requires us. Sometimes it doesn't meet the standard, right? And sometimes it does. And so we take it from there. But there's absolutely a rise. I feel like everybody has an Instagram page, and everybody wants to be an influencer, and everybody's trying to get their followers, and everybody's saying all the things that they want to say at all times. And so that does create, that kind of friction that could possibly lead to issues.
So like with that, do you think it's hard, like since everybody has cameras and like a bunch of like technology, do you think it's harder to keep stuff being tampered with because there's so many people able to like record stuff, they're able to speak their opinions based on like court rulings and like stuff that's happening inside the courtroom? Do you think it's harder to like keep that information inside the courtroom rather than just have it go to the public based on all this technology now?
So the courtroom is an open courtroom, and everyone is allowed to see all things that occur in the courtroom unless the courtroom is closed for some reason, right? Or there's some kind of gag order that's issued by the judge based on the nature. So you can have something on Instagram that someone has posted, right? Only in Dade, they'll post something crazy, and then, you'll see, perhaps months later it turns into a crime. That same video, presumably, I'm not talking about a specific case, but presumably can also be used as evidence in the trial. It just has to go through, the proper challenges, and the proper foundations have to be led for the judge either to allow it or to not allow it, depending on the circumstances. So just because it's, on Instagram or it's on your home Ring camera doesn't mean that you can't bring it into court if that's what's caused or what's needed to prove your case. Or, there's evidentiary rulings that have to go with all of that. And I'm just speaking generally, but yes, you can use them in both. The tampering is, if you have an objection to the evidence because you think it's been tampered, then that's something, another type of hearing that you have to have, and where the judge has to listen to what everybody has to say with respect to that particular issue, and then, give their opinion based on what comes out, or give their ruling, excuse me.
You went from one side of the courtroom to the other side of the courtroom, right? So what was that process like for you? Because I guess like in my mind of athletics, I think a lot in that way. It's like the player became a coach. You know
right.
What I mean? It's like the player became a coach. And you have your relationships, you're human. How did you handle that? Obviously now probably you're more settled in, but how did you handle that from the election forward?
Well, so you go from being an advocate to your client, for your client as a lawyer and advocating your position, to sitting as a kind of like a neutral party listening to what everybody says. And so your brain does have to make a switch and say, it's not my job to advocate for one side or the other. It's my job to listen to what both parties have to say, apply the facts to the law, and then make my ruling based on that, right? Like anything in life, the more you do it, the better you get at it, the easier you get at it, right? So the art of judging, the more you do it, the more you're exposed to different issues, to different, scenarios, to different laws, to different facts, the easier it is to process that. I think the longer you are a judge, the better you are at being a judge, because you have access to all these new things, right? Someone who's been doing it for 5 years probably doesn't have the same experience and seen the same things as someone who's been doing it for 20 years, and vice versa. So, there is a switch that has to happen in your mind, right? From becoming this advocate that you're used to being to sitting as a person who's going to evaluate the facts and the law and make that decision. With respect to the relationships, you don't live in a bubble, right? So obviously I'm a judge, and so the people that I see most is lawyers, right? And so the people that come before me that go to the various, organizations, fundraisers, et cetera, are all lawyers. We have processes. For instance, if my best friend is a lawyer, she comes in front of me, I recuse myself because of our personal relationships. We have canons and rules that kind of guide us with respect to that. So, that doesn't take as much practice because, it comes with the way that, kind of comes with the job, right? So now you're the judge. And so I don't hang out with, all my lawyer friends, doing lawyer functions. I usually hang out more with, my judge friends at the events and so forth, because there has to be a sense of professionalism that draws that line. And if again, like I said, if my, family member who's a lawyer or my friends who are lawyers come in front of me, I just don't take those cases. You recuse yourself and you let someone else handle it. Because again, you have to think of where we're coming from. What we want to be is fair. We want to be impartial. We want the parties to understand that when you come in front of me, you're going to get the same shot as the other person, regardless of, anything, right? And we want to follow the law. So we don't put ourselves in those positions. We recuse ourselves and allow some other judge to take it so that we can then go forward with the job. Yes, sir.
We got time for one more question. So
it's a good one.
Earlier, when you put the orb on, you feel the weight of the job responsibilities. Do you find being a judge, like, it's hard to have a social life you take that rope off? Because it's like, I'd imagine everyone that speaks to you, they want to know information about cases, and you can't say that. So how's your social life?
So, the funny thing is everybody thinks that, but no, most lawyers don't come and ask us about cases. They know what the rules are too, and they're bound by the rules of professionalism as well. So it's not like we're in a function and then I have lawyers that are in front of me that ask me, Judge, what do you think about this case? It's called ex parte. Nobody does that. Nobody wants to be in trouble, and no one's going to engage in that kind of behavior. So we don't really go through that. What does change is, as I explained before, when I was elected to this position and I took the bench, it is, I think Manny can talk about it too. It's your life changes, right? It encompasses your whole life, and your whole life changes. And so you do find yourself sometimes in a situation when you're like, you know what? I need to remove myself from this situation because it's just not appropriate for me, right? Social media is one of those examples, right? It's not appropriate for me to make comments or do this or do that. It's just, so I just remove that part, right? Where someone else might be able to be online saying all the things that they want. That's not part of who I am anymore. So there are aspects of that, that changes. But with respect to lawyers coming and trying to get information that just doesn't really happen, to be honest with you. Because I have to abide by the same rules of professionalism as they do, and so they're not going to do that either, because there are ramifications for all of that.
Great questions. You guys did a great job. Judge, any questions you got for me? I know we kind of like turn it around.
Oh, I know. I didn't know until just a little while that I was going to get to ask some questions. So first, I have a great question. So how is it being a dad to a girl versus a dad to two boys, right? You had two boys first, and now you have a little girl. 14,
12, the boy, little girl, a year old. I can tell you I'm completely in love with her. Like yesterday she cried, and instead of being like, no, she's gonna go to sleep. No, I was like, no, I gotta carry her. So it's definitely, I'm a little bit older now too, but I'm incredibly patient. I mean, I'm being very honest with, just in love, completely in love.
So girl dad all the way.
All the way, 100%, 100%.
That's awesome.
I love my boys, hang out with my boys 24/7, but the girl has stolen my heart officially. Like, it is. My wife gets jealous sometimes. She's like, "Oh, but you know." I was like, "It's game, set, match." So
I hear you. That's wonderful. Congratulations to you both.
Thank you.
To you both. And so I guess my other question to you is: so you're a full-time mayor, but you also have other jobs or businesses that you run. I know you have Mayor's Cafe. Yep. How's that going?
Hey, shout out to Danny, Jeff, the whole crew. It's awesome. Because the one thing that I realized about the restaurant business, and I never thought about this at first. I thought it was gonna be cool, showing up, saying hi to people, but you create some real connections. And again, we live in a very divisive time when it comes to politics, but when you break bread with people, you realize we're all pretty much the same. We want the same things in life, right?
Right.
And I've been able to create so many awesome relationships with people who otherwise I would have never met, or they never would have had the chance to meet me or talk to me. So I literally have not dozens, hundreds of new friends because of it, and genuine relationships, because I see them every single week and we just sit down and talk. So that to me is beyond making money, beyond doing, just that impact was awesome for my life. Like, I truly enjoyed just having those real, honest conversations every day. Where otherwise, as an elected official, it's tough. When people come to see me, they're coming to see me about an issue or something they want, or what, now people are like, unfortunately, I've even met people at the restaurant that have aged and passed away, and I've gone to the funerals, or they have a birthday party. Now otherwise, if it wasn't for the restaurant, I would not be experiencing all those new folks in my life.
Isn't that amazing?
It really is.
It is amazing. And I love that you said that when you break bread with people, you really get to know people, because it's the truth. It's where you're at, you're most familial, right? What do families do? They sit at the table and they eat and they talk.
Yep.
And so now you have this every day with the whole community, really. That's amazing. Amazing.
Yep. Great questions. Appreciate you. And Judge, in closing, for that next Eleane Sosa Bruzon, following in your footsteps, some words of advice, some inspirational words, motivation of that kid who's thinking of one day following a legal career, but going into public service and following in your footsteps. What are those words in closing that you have for that kid?
It's the hardest question I got.
Yeah.
So, I think a couple of things. I think that when you're young, you want to have everything kind of figured out, right? Like, I know I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a judge, I want to be this or that. But, you know, life has a funny way of changing things around for you. And I find that, you know, the more students I talk to, they're like, oh, I want to do this and I want to do that. And I always tell them, you know, I never thought about being a judge. Not one time. Not for 12 years of practice, right? I always said, oh, that's not for me, that's not for me. But life has a funny way of tricking things around, right? And sometimes people are so concerned about what their plan is and how they're going to get to their plan that they miss the opportunities that life gives them, right? God, life, serendipity, whatever it is. And they're so busy holding on to what they think that they don't have any free hands to grab what's giving you, to capitalize on the opportunities, to try the new things that you would have never thought would be your next passion. And so I think, you know, to anybody that's listening, whether it's law school or business school or, you know, media or whatever the case may be, I would say to you, it's great to have a plan, but don't hold on so tight with both hands that you don't have a free hand to grab for the opportunities that are going to come your way, because you never know when that makes really the life change. And it opens the doors that give you the best life. That's what I consider. I consider that I have the best job in the world, and it was based on a bunch of different circumstances and opportunity that I never would have imagined would have come my way, but they did, and I was able to capitalize on them. And as a result, I literally, like you said, we're living our best life, right? Doing the thing that we love the most, connecting with our community, servicing our community, because a life without service is not really a life, right? Fulfilled. So that's my advice. I think that would be my long-term advice, which is, you know, give yourself the opportunity to be open for what comes your way.
Powerful words from the great Miami-Dade County Judge, Eleane Sosa Bruzon. Tune in next Wednesday on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
Thank you.
Thank you.